And finally, we're going to hear about the fast track to the Internet of Everything, the connected home opportunity. Rob Chanuk, who is a Senior Vice President at Qualcomm Technologies in California, is going to tell us a little bit about what you're up to. And I'm always fascinated when a chip maker wants to be in the content and distribution business. So,
oh, we don't want to be in the content distribution business, we want to be in the software business.
Well, Rob, tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
There you go. So, to some degree, you can actually take a few of the slides that we just saw from Keo, and they actually apply to AllJoyn. So the thing I came here to talk about again today is this project we have called AllJoyn. The similarities are between what Bernard was talking about and what I'm going to talk about are that it is an open source platform for getting devices from different ecosystems and different vendors to speak to each other. We take a slightly different technical approach, and we're actually, the two of us are had some interesting conversations about it.
Did you make a deal in the back room?
We might have. Nothing to announce
yet. That's what the cable show is all about.
It's good. It's good connections. But I think Bernard really stated clearly, when there's a place that we've gotten to in the industry, we have so many fragmented ecosystems, and for us, the place it started from was a little bit more on the mobile side. I mean, Qualcomm is at its core a mobile company, and yet we also have a lot now with the merger of Qualcomm and Atheros. We have a lot of silicon also in set-top boxes and other devices in the home. And we started looking at about how do we get these devices to talk to each other in a horizontal way. And we wanted something that was really independent of physical layers. So if you look at protocols like Zigbee and Z-Wave, they're sort of a confusion of the protocol with the physical, with the radio part of it. And the things that have been successful historically have been broken up more into the layers where you get the abstraction. So as you innovate up here, and innovate down here, you can actually do it at different paces. So we took an approach to build this platform out, and we've actually also open sourced it and made it available. And what we're doing now this year is building up open services on top of that framework that we think are probably of interest to people here.
Yeah, and what kind of services?
I think one of the first one that's probably the most interesting is an open audio streaming protocol that works over Wi-Fi. So the wireless audio industry has for a long time either been constrained to vertical licensed implementations or just using Bluetooth, which has the open A2DP standard.
But a narrow band, relatively narrow bandwidth.
Not only a narrow band, but a user experience that isn't actually what people want. They want. We're finding consumers want more range. They don't necessarily want the pairing experience that Bluetooth requires. They want basically an internet-like experience, but in a peer-to-peer fashion. So on top of AllJoyn, we are actually this month open sourcing an audio streaming protocol that we think will gain wide acceptance in the audio industry.
Tell us a little bit more about AllJoyn, because you've had this announced several months ago, I believe.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. That's several months, a lot of months ago. But where does it stand? I mean, can you talk about any of your partners, your operator partners, or others?
I can't announce the partners yet. There are commercial partners that we'll be announcing later on this year at a different show. We do have developers that are using it. There's 50 odd apps in the Android marketplace that use it. And we're doing a lot of work with companies that have to do with the sort of multi-screen applications. So for example, at CES and Mobile World Congress, we showed two different applications, one with NASCAR where you had tablet-based content being synchronized to the TV screen. The communication was done with AllJoyn. And we did some really interesting stuff with Sesame Workshop where you actually had the characters moving back and forth between the two screens, all coordinated by AllJoyn. But those were really application-specific uses of AllJoyn. The audio streaming and then other things like a notification protocol we're talking about are designed to be building blocks that service providers and other developers put together into other experiences.
You also talk about, use the generic term, I think you said you invented the generic term, proximal, I can never say it right, proximal networking. Tell us about that and where that stands as a premise for AllJoyn.
Right, well the idea there is that we have protocols that work very well with the cloud. There's no need to reinvent HTTP, there's no need to reinvent how DNS works to find names on the internet. But when you walk into a room and you want to, for example, you walk into a meeting room and you want to find that there's a projector that allows you to stream to it instead of having to plug a VGA cable. By the way, 2013 and we're still plugging VGA cables to show PowerPoints in, right? But you have to be able to discover these things on an ad hoc basis. So it turns out, and the reason I use the word proximal is that it is actually useful to us to know what is near us, right?
And this is a smart system that recognizes what's there.
Right, it's a framework that allows devices to advertise services, not just devices, but so you don't say, I'm the phone, you say things like, I implement the audio service, right? And then you can discover those things on the other side and make that connection and go from there. So the two challenges are just facilitating the bits flowing across the network, and then the other part is actually having interoperability of useful services, and that's the part where I think it's starting to take off this year.
And is that coming out of the set-top box or back in the cloud or further back up the network?
The things we're working on specifically right now are constrained to the local environment. So in our scenario, in an all-joint scenario, you would use something like a set-top box or home gateway to deal with the content in the home and the interactions in the home, and for things that need to go out onto the public internet, they would serve as a gateway. And that sort of comes back to a principle that we have about proximity is, proximity also implies privacy and security,
yes.
Right? So rather than saying, I want that door lock or that thermostat or that air conditioner on the public internet, I actually wanted to only communicate in the boundaries of my home or in the boundaries of my enterprise, and then very securely and very specifically allow certain kinds of connections back out to the cloud.
Now you said you have clients, but you can't disclose them yet. You'll do that later this year. Obviously, the all-joint is one of a number of home network services that are being proposed. What sets you apart? What sets you, Qualcomm and all-joint, apart from some of the other systems that are being proposed and implemented by some cable operators?
Yeah, I think a couple things are different. One is that we're not just about the play in the home. We want to be able to use the same protocols when you're in your home, in your car, in your enterprise, or when you're walking down the street or in a retailer, right? So you can build systems on top of all-joint that work in all of those contexts. That we think is going to be really unique, and I think it's going to make it easier for developers to build broad scale applications, right? If I'm streaming audio to these really nice speakers I have in my home, and then I want to go play a song in my car, I want to use the same player, and I want to use the same protocols.
Yeah, I mean, at CES a few years ago, Comcast showed some ideas of almost a bounce from the home server, home gateway, into the vehicle, the automobile. There are other ideas like this that you have, I assume.
Right. I'm more talking about you're in a car driving down the road at 65 miles an hour.
And like California.
Yeah, it's California, you get 70 sometimes. And you actually only want to interact with the things around you. So you don't really you don't need to be going back to the cloud.
So they're location specific.
Right.
Where you are.
Right. I mean, we act differently. Because we're sitting this close to each other, we interact differently than if you were in the cloud somewhere and it was a video conference. Well, it turns out those kinds of interactions we're used to map very well to privileges and systems that I think will take user experience to the next level. For example, my kid's friend gets into the back seat of the car and they want to play a song. Well, I don't actually want to pair their phone to my car. I may not see this kid again, right? The privilege that I want is one that's very related to the physical proximity. If you're in my car, you can stream to my audio system or my video system. If you're out of the car, you can't. Well, it turns out I think we know how to do that technically, and on top of all-join, we can build that security primitive that says in or out of the car, and voila, you have a user experience that is exactly what consumers want. That's what gets exciting.
Well, it sounds also like what cable operators want to offer to customize their capabilities.
Absolutely.
Obviously, a lot of people, as I said earlier, are developing concepts like this, maybe not quite so integrated as Qualcomm's approach. What's the business value? I mean, what's the proposition that you're showing the cable operator that he benefits from new revenues, new services? I mean, where's the business opportunity that you're recommending?
Well, I think there's two business benefits, I think, to using something like all-join. Our vision on the home side is that in the fullness of time, we're going to move to 802.11ah for the Internet of Things, and with all-join on top of it as a platform. You use all-join and you get cost savings from not having to put those boxes with the 8 radios to do the home security systems in there. And that's sort of a top line kind of thing. The other thing that I think is interesting for the cable operators and the MSOs is at the edges of those networks, there's an opportunity to provide service, which is what that business is. And so we're not trying to do that as Qualcomm. We're trying to facilitate the connectivity, and then we think there's plenty of room in the ecosystem for operators to actually provide services on top of the system. I mean, we're open sourcing all-join because the thing open source is really good at is creating a platform for other people to differentiate and innovate on, but we don't need to differentiate we need to create an ecosystem.
And I think I'll wrap up with a final question of, so a year from now when we come and talk to you about, or you come and talk to us about what AllJoyn has accomplished, you know, what are the one or two things that would be on your checklist of what we'll see about AllJoyn a year from today?
A year from now, you're going to see multiple TV and set-top vendors with AllJoyn services enable them. So you'll be able to have applications that do things like throw a notification up onto the TV when your phone rings, or when your washing machine load is done, or when your refrigerator's door is left open. And you're going to start, what we're going to see, I think, is developers take that plus media streaming and build experiences that operators will implement for consumers.
As an analyst, I find that very interesting that you look at those kind of productivity applications, like the refrigerator doors open or the dishwasher's finished.
Right.
Since everyone here has been talking about the entertainment applications,
Right.
and of course you talked about that as well. It looks like an exciting year ahead.
I think so.
Rob, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
We'll hear what's more about that later.